If my mother ever found out that her only child is gonna go to hell forever because he left Islam, it's gonna hurt her so badly.
If you keep questioning everything, you're going to have the most doubtful, horrible, untrusting life in the entire universe. The goal of life is to be in peace, right?
A lot of what you're saying just isn't relevant.
So you're
I'm not going to be found in a situation.
Thank you. I would love to wrap this up, and I would love it if the women would wrap it up.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. Assalamu alaikum, DEEN lovers, everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well at home. Today we're back again with another reaction video. Joining me is your very favorite Ali Deen. What's going on?
Alhamdulillah, no complaints. Weather's getting colder, that's why I got a beanie on indoor today. But khair, no complaints about that.
So Ali D, explain to us what's going on. What's this video about?
What you are bringing up is not relevant.
This is a very
They're not on the same
video.
page.
If you're familiar with this account, YouTube account,
when I want to talk, I get
do a lot of
no, we're not going to do that.
You're interrupting everyone too.
Yes, let's have no
I just want this question.
This is the 114th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 114 episodes will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
Together to discuss Islamic topics. Now, granted, I don't know how knowledgeable they are. I don't know where they're getting their knowledge from. But a lot of times, the disclaimer is many times when people leave Islam, it's for personal reasons, it's anecdotal, things of that nature. So I guarantee you'll hear in this video people talk about, well, I left because of cultural reasons, or my family did this to me and they hurt me, and then try to equate it to Islam. So it's going to be a very interesting back and forth between Muslims and ex-Muslims, and then we'll see how it goes down, inshallah.
Okay. Before we begin, I want us to all keep in mind an ayah of the Quran that will pretty much illustrate not everybody, but a lot of the people that you hear, I'll say maybe majority of them, their whole demeanor throughout this whole episode. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in Surah Al-Jathiyah, he says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاءَ وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ وختم على سمعه وقلبه وجعل على بصره غشاوة فمن يهديه من بعد الله أفلا تذكرون. So what the verse is saying is, have you not seen that person who has taken their hawa, their desires, as their God? Have you not seen that person? And Allah had allowed them to go astray, even though they have knowledge. They have knowledge. And Allah had sealed their hearing, their heart, and also put upon their eyesight and their vision a veil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and who guides after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who is there else to guide but him? أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Do you not contemplate on these issues? Let's begin with the very first part.
The other side is brainwashed. Can the agreeers please step forward?
I think brainwash is a strong word, but I also obviously step forward. I was raised Muslim. I'm Iranian. My mom's side of the family, especially a lot of Iranians, they felt like they just had to become Muslim to obviously adhere. And it's extreme what they're doing in Iran. Obviously, I'm not comparing, but I guess with brainwash, I also went to an Islamic school. So my really devout Muslim friends, it feels like brainwash. I have a friend who's hijabi, and I just for her, it feels like it wasn't a choice kind of vibe. It's just something you should do because of your family and because of the religion. But then she's also super devout Muslim. It's just a hairy topic.
Can the disagreeers please step forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree in the fact that brainwash is a very strong word, just like you said, yet you still step forward. I'm not familiar with anyone on this set, so for me to call someone that I don't know brainwashed, I would feel that it's pretty disrespectful, especially not knowing where they came from, what their beliefs are, why their lifestyle is the way that it is. So I don't really see how that kind of goes together.
I just think any kind of philosophy that doesn't encourage you to ask questions, to challenge it, to seek further truth, I think that should automatically kind of be a little bit of a red flag to kind of say this is the one truth and everybody else might be getting maybe closer or further from the truth.
So while I see where you're coming from, I don't agree that people are brainwashed because I do not want to disrespect your experience. I think it may seem a certain way, but it might not be the truth for everybody. And I also want to touch up on you talked about how you can't question something. I think for me, for years, I really struggled with my faith. I don't remember being a child and praying because I have to pray, but praying because I felt like there were repercussions that I would have to face if I didn't pray. And it wasn't until I got to leave my house and go to college and experience Islam on my own that I had a good association with it. But I also believe that Islam is one of the religions that does encourage questioning. It says, if you have doubts, I will have answers.
I just wanted to make a note. This is and maybe it's my personal experience. Growing up Muslim, and I went to an Islamic academy. I was hijabi after 4th grade years, you have to be. And I had religion class every day. And I will just say, I feel like every question I had is met with, because the Quran says so. That's it. I date someone who's has no background in Islam or didn't grow up that way. You're going to get met with, because the Quran says so, because Allah deems it so, and that is why.
The reason that I disagree that the other side is brainwashed is...
Oh, there's a lot to unpack
A
there.
lot.
So let's, before they could give us more cans of worms to, deal with, let's
dive in. Okay. I'll start, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Okay, so the first thing, before we even started watching the video, I told you that a lot of things that are going to come out from the ex-Muslim side, it's going to be story time about their personal life. It's going to be anecdotal. So a lot of things that affect their reasoning for leaving Islam, it's going to come from culture, it's going to come from parents, people who don't necessarily or cannot necessarily answer their questions. It's going to make them start fearing and start wanting to leave and put doubts in them, and the shaitan is going to affect that X, Y, and Z. That's number one. Number two, the guy with the Hawaiian shirt, he said that the problem or a red flag is you don't have the ability to ask questions in Islam.
I think that's Amir.
Yeah. So I think he's limited. I think his mindset is very limited, because of course you can ask questions in Islam. Some questions are encouraged to ask, because a person without knowledge is a person who is misguided, and that's someone who tends to want to leave Islam or leave and change their environment and do certain things. You ask questions, and you ask the right people those questions, and then from there, inshallah, you get the answers that are correct. It doesn't have to be the answers that make you feel better, but it has to be the answers that are correct, despite whether or not you like it or not.
Yeah, this is a common objection we always hear. You can't ask questions, you can't think, you can't, and this is so dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I think because what you said, the other side is, we put so much power into people's hands, whether they're shayukh and whatnot. Will say, well, that guy there told me that, so that must be what it is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And we never give, we don't have a principle of charity. And this is how you know someone's not sincere. So Amir, he will not quote for you anywhere in the Quran where it says, don't ask questions, don't think. He'll just say, well, this is just what I feel like it's about, right? And so that's why I'm saying it's insincere, because they'll never give you receipts on any of the stuff they're talking about, right? So Amir, you're going to see that a lot from him.
Yeah.
And it's very, very sad, because even the sister here who resembles a lot of what he looks like in terms of practicing from the appearance. What's her name? Atiya. She disagreed.
Right.
She disagreed, and she's not even like hijabi, obviously, but she said, you know, people have different experiences, and so people like Amir who leave the religion and become atheists have like this idea where, you know, what they say is exactly what everybody's experience is, and it's kind of like an arrogant approach to looking at the whole situation. Philosophy. Islam is not a philosophy.
Right.
Islam is a way of life, right? You could say Buddhism is a philosophy, you know, because there's not really a lot of practice besides like meditation. But Islam actually encompasses your everyday life, the way you treat people, the way you talk, the way you go, even use the bathroom, the way you eat, the way you walk, the way you sit. You know, these are the things that Islam actually enforces. So it's not just a philosophy, my friend. And if you're talking about brainwash, who's to say that Amir here is not brainwashed?
Right.
Who's here to say that Janet here is not brainwashed? Because if you look at the way they look and the things that they talk about, did they just, you know, go out into the middle of the desert and thought about those things and say, you know what, I'm gonna wear jeans, I'm gonna wear skirts,
right?
You know, I'm gonna be LGBTQ. No, they literally looked at everybody else around them in the society and they imitated them. They followed them. They were influenced. So we can easily say Amir's brainwashed. Yeah. We could easily say Janet is brainwashed. They're living in a society which promotes atheism and all that. So I mean, it's anybody could be brainwashed. It's a very sad and childish sort of argument. I think.
No, absolutely. This concept of when someone leaves Islam, a lot of times, again, it's not that they have a problem or they find a contradiction within the Quran and Sunnah. Most of the time, again, it's personal reasons. And so when they leave it, where do they go is the question.
Yep.
Where do they end up? And if they think atheism is the answer, well, atheism has a lot of gaps, has a lot of holes in it. They can't answer why we are here, where we came from, and where we are going. And so this idea that I'm just going to run freely and that I want to do my own thing, well, again, as Brother Uthman said, a lot of these things that you're doing, one way or another, you're going to be influenced by your society, your community, your faith. A lot of things influence who you are. And so the question is, which one are you going to accept? The one that says do whatever you want to do? Well, if I do whatever I want to do, I can harm you, I can steal, I can do things that you may not like, I like. Very subjective. But there is no objective morality. And that is what's missing with people who think, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing.
Right. Let's go to the next section. Yeah.
Women and men are equal in the eyes of Allah.
I think a lot of people misconstrue about Islam, and when they say that women are mistreated in Islam, it just comes from the fact that men and women were created for different purposes. Now that doesn't mean that one holds more value than the other and that one is seen as better.
As an atheist now, I still hold that Islam does come from a feminist place. You see women in positions of leadership. So despite my being on this side, I still appreciate that Islam has that perspective.
I grew up overseas. I grew up in Bangladesh, and growing up in a country that seemed like a lot of things are not fair for women, a lot of things are not fair for minorities. And I think I struggled with that thought, like, okay, if men and women are equal in the eyes of Allah, then why does this exist? And what I realized as I grew older was that we're also living in a society. So I definitely have to face the repercussions of like other people and the social construct that we have, right?
The systems outside of it.
Yeah, the system outside of it. So like our experiences are a product of like what we believe in,
exactly.
And but also like our position within the system. And I won't put the fact that like society sees women as not equal onto God and onto my religion, because that's not what religion was meant to be. And I'm not going to say that Islam does not believe that women and men are not equal.
This was one of the biggest topics that caused me to really doubt my faith. Looking at the Quran, looking at the authentic hadith, and also just from historical records as well. Men are allowed to have sex with female slaves. In Surah Nisa, verse 24, it says, prohibited to men are married women except for what your right hand possesses. And your right hand possessions refers to female slaves. And we see multiple hadith of instances where the men have just defeated the tribe, they have female war captives, and Muhammad allowed them to have sex with them. And that's probably going to be rape, because what woman would be consenting to sex in that situation?
I think too, like just thinking about the Quran and my upbringing.
We're just not going to go past that,
right.
If he didn't say that. So obviously here, I think firstly, Atiya, she brought up some good points, which is that a lot of what you're seeing as experience will differ from culture to culture, right? But the question was about, are women and men equal in the eyes of Allah?
Right.
Are verses quoted? No. We're just talking about experiences. We're not answering the question, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers this question by saying that a Muslim woman and a Muslim man, they are both, in the sight of Allah, their deeds are both the same. They get the same rewards, right? So this is what we're talking about when we say in the eyes of Allah, is how does Allah view them, right? So if a woman prays and a man prays, are their prayers seen different by Allah? No. It's the exact same. They get the same reward. Right. That's what the question is about. Now, when you start to go to different aspects and talk about, someone said something bad to me when I was a kid, that has no bearing and weight on what the Quran says about that, and that has no bearing and weight as how Allah perceives it.
Yeah. So I think exactly, they didn't understand the question clear. Because a lot of times I think the way they're trying to answer it here is that are women and men equal in Islam? They're just saying, are men and women equal? And so it's a loaded question if that's the direction that they want to go. But Islam, just like Brother Uthman said, we are spiritually equal. We pray, salat, we give zakat, we fast, we do all these things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us as such. But when we say equality, I would say equity is important in Islam. It's not gender equality, it's gender just. Right. Meaning you don't expect a woman to do everything a man does and vice versa. We are two people that complement one another. It's like a yin and yang kind of thing, and we work together. And so I'll just give a small example of that. Do we say, for example, let's say a drunk driver got into an accident with the family. The police come, they assess it, the paramedics come, and the firemen come. Do we say all three of those professions are equal? No, they complement and help one each other. When the police gets there, he makes sure he assesses the environment, who did what, where's the drunk driver, let me arrest him. The paramedics come to check on the health of everyone, and then the firemen make sure if there's a fire, if they need to break people out of a car and do all of these things. So they all work together in order to achieve the goal of making sure everything is back to normal, everyone is good, people are taken care of justly. Right. But to say that are they equal is a question that it doesn't work in that sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, الرجال قوامون على النساء. So if a man is made a caretaker of women because he has to, by the way, this whole 50-50 stuff is not true in Islam. He takes care of the woman, takes care of the house, the bills, feeds them, does all these things for them. And then he is compensated for doing that. And then the woman has her job and her role of things that they need to do. So you don't expect them to do the same exact thing. Meaning, if there's 200-pound weights on the ground, you don't expect the woman to carry 100 pounds and the man carry the other 100 and say they're splitting it equally. Yeah. You expect the man to do more because that's his nature. That's what he's supposed to do in Islam. Yeah. And in general. So this whole societal push of, the job that you work at pays men more than women, go talk to them about that. Islam does not allow that. If they're doing the same job, you got to pay them equally. You got to take care of them equally. So this whole equality thing is equity when it comes to Islam.
Yeah, again, I think there's a lot of conflation of those two terms, which is about equality, and then there's like roles, right? So it's not the same thing. Everybody has different roles. And for you to say like, well, why can't this person have the other roles? Islam has a worldview that it presents. And this is Allah, the creator, who created you. Mm. And he's telling you, I created you for this reason. I created you with these abilities, these strengths, these weaknesses. and he's helping you understand and guiding you through this life when you accept him as a guide to navigate through all of the challenges of life, right? And to be able to overcome any of those obstacles with his permission. But when you start to go and question that and say, but why does it have to be like that? But why? You know, I think the big issue at this point is, do you accept the Quran? Do you accept that Allah is the creator of everyone and everything, and he mandates and has the ability to mandate whatever he wants for us? If you don't, then we don't need to have a discussion. Anything else after that is really redundant. Now, back to this Mr. Kafir guy. That's what he calls himself.
That's crazy.
I didn't make that up. That's his name. That's what he called himself, Mr. Kafir. And he'll explain why. But he says, immediately starts talking about like the right hand possessions, and that's what women are doing, and assumes, and we can't use this R word, but that they're being, you know, that way dealt with forcefully by Muslim men. According to those verses, nothing in those verses mentions about forcing yourself on women. That is something that we know that from the hadith corpuses is absolutely haram, because the Prophet ﷺ, he freed women that were merely getting whooped or they were getting beat. Mm-hmm. So if he freed them for that, why would he allow something that is much worse, right? We don't have any sort of, I challenge this guy, Mr. Kafir guy. And this is what I'm saying is when somebody doesn't have charity for the Quran, and they have their own, he made up his mind already. He already has misconceptions and preconceived notions that he's willing to enforce and that he's willing to impose upon you, right? Impose upon the Quran. The Quran doesn't say anything about the R word, right? It doesn't say, oh, the right hand possessions, this is what they are, do that to them and force yourselves upon. It doesn't say anything like that. And you'll be hard pressed to find one scholar who says that you're allowed to do that. Our classical scholars never ever mentioned in the exegesis of these verses that this is permissible to do, and it's 100% haram. And we could get into that as well. But I don't think that had anything to do with the question about right hand possession. Why are you bringing right hand possessions into it? It's talking about men and women seen equal. Now you're talking about combatants of war. Yeah. Are combatants of war, are soldiers equal to the people that are the prisoners? You see, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure the United States have combatants of war. They have war prisoners. I'm pretty sure any sort of military on the face of this earth has war prisoners. Russia has war prisoners. North Korea has it. So you are saying now that they should be treated the same. I mean, in virtue of being a prisoner, I don't think anybody would make that argument, but that's what he's doing right now, right? So, subhanAllah.
Very slick. That's why he's wearing a mask.
He's wearing a mask and hiding himself.
His identity.
Well, like, you know, you're in America. I don't think anyone's after you, bro. So, all right. Next point is 15. Okay, we're still. Oh, we did. Dang, yeah, this is long.
Yeah, they must be. I'm telling you, they're arguing over. You know.
So let's let them.
Okay.
Let's let them talk it out.
Had every day, the two biggest ones that stand out to me would be like the issue of the hijab, which I know a lot of people will counter. So the Quran says women have to cover the khimar to cover up so that they don't tempt the men. And then I will say the Quran does technically say men's hijab is their gaze, the male gaze.
It doesn't say any of that. I just will make a quick point. It doesn't mention the Quran does not mention anything of what she said. It didn't say that women have to wear their hijabs and khimar so that they don't tempt men. It doesn't say that. You know, I think if you're going to claim that you read the Quran, actually read the Quran, okay? To say that men in the Quran, it mentions that the men's hijab it doesn't mention anything about men's hijab, right? Men don't have hijab. Hijab is a concept that's for women, right? Men have what you call dress code.
Right.
We don't have this idea of hijab. Hijab is something that's for the women. Do we have a dress code? Yes. Are there things that we can and cannot do, and parts of our bodies that we have to cover up in the prayer, outside the prayer? Absolutely, we have that too. So I just wanted to clear that up, bro.
Yeah.
Male gaze. And it just seems a little silly to me. Beyond that, like in the Quran, how men can have up to 4 wives, but women can't. It's like, in the Islamic school, I want to say the azan, the call to prayer. All the boys in my class, they're like, we're going to do the call to prayer for this Friday. I'm ineligible because I'm a woman, apparently. Can't do the azan, I can't do the call to prayer. So just those, I would say, are my Quran-specific examples. And they're like, well, this is to protect women. I don't see that at all.
Yeah, so...
What did she say?
There's so much to unpack with her.
What did she say in the beginning? She said something about...
She said...
before the adhan. Oh, she said men can marry more than one wife. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Janet, would you like for women to be able to marry more than one husband? Would you like that kind of society world? Can you point to me any society in the world today that you would want to be a part of that has that rule that men can marry more than one woman, or women can marry more than one husband? As you see, when we're just pointing out things like that and we're just complaining about it and we're not really thinking about it, it's really silly. That's silly, Janet.
Yeah,
Janet, to say that, well, why can't women have? Well, is that what you want? And if you ask her, she'll say no, but we should just have the right. See, when you're just so right hungry, we're just hungry for rights for no reason, vain rights. We just want rights just because. Oh, he's doing it, I should be able to do it too, right?
Right.
But how about the mahr? Why don't you ever hear this brought up that why do men have to pay the mahr to the women? Women should also pay a dowry to the men when they're getting married. It's never brought up as a rule. You know why? Of course. Because it's their benefit. They love it. They love to get gifts to everybody, right? Yeah. Do you see a movement in the Islamic world of men that are like, say no, hashtag no mahr? You know, we're not doing any of this stuff. So this should make you question the motive of what what this person is saying. Right? Because they're not being fair, they're not being just. Because if you were to ask them, would you like that, Janet, to have multiple husbands? She'll most likely say no. But then why are you complaining about it?
Why is that your argument?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, no, it's immature of her. I think it's just back and forth. Well, why can't I have this? Well, I want that and I want this. This is why the whole concept of the alphabet community is doing that gender role switch thing and trying to see if they can get the benefits of the opposite gender, which is totally baseless and again, immature. If I could just touch on something small about the idea of men having multiple wives.
Yeah.
First of all, we already know a man has to be just between all of them and all this one's X, Y, and Z. She needs to study up on that as well. But I'll tell you something that's probably hidden that a lot of people don't address. The population of women in culture and in areas in society has a lot to do with the ability to be able to do so. Tell me how many men she knows personally that are operating in this fashion, meaning having multiple wives. It is not a common thing. I don't walk into a masjid and every man has 4 wives and they're bragging to each other. Well, I got 3, man. I can't wait until I catch up. This is not really a common practice. But let's say it is in some cultures, in some places. There are places where there are more women than men, where if every man got married to one woman, then there'll be a lot of women who are not married. And there are also women who have children, who are widows, whose men have passed away, their husbands have passed away, and would like that extra help, would like a man to take care of things for them and provide for them and do certain things for them that a woman is unable to do for herself because of certain circumstances due to her situation, and that a man can help and step in. Well, where are those things? I bet you she has never looked into those things before.
You know, that's a great point that you mentioned. That everything that they're complaining about is actually, these are solutions and remedies to society.
Yeah.
So when people are complaining about these different, solutions that the Quran is putting forth, this may not be a solution for Janet, but maybe a woman who lives in a third world country, maybe her relatives are all bombed. She doesn't have any parents to take care of her. And maybe she needs to get married, right? But the only people that are around are men that have already wives, right? And so this will be a helping hand to certain people, right? It may not be a helping hand to her because she lives in a first world country where there's a lot of comfort, where you don't have to think about these sort of things. And so this is a classical example of people who live in the first world who are trying to make their problems and they're trying to export their issues to everywhere in the world. Right. So just because you may not need that, it doesn't mean that there are people out there who don't. Right. And so this is another point too that we always find with people who are making these kind of objections. Not always, but almost always, is they don't have that sort of humility and say, well, are there people who this would actually be helping? And there are, right? But if you're going to act like the world is 50 states, Janet, the entire world became 50 states. You know, it's a really ethnocentric thing for you to do, to impose this kind of like, hey, well, you know, why is this even happening? This is not happening in America, and you know, it's very, very sad.
You know, one thing they never like mention is they never get mad at a man who has multiple girlfriends, or a woman who's sleeping around and doing all this stuff. But when it comes to marriage, which is a sacred thing that you have to go through, you have to be prepared for it to take it. Oh, we got a problem. That's where we throw the book at people.
If a man is saying, "Hey, I want the responsibility to take care of a woman," right? Why are we just going to reduce that down to his sexual pleasures? Right. He's not saying, like, you could probably say that if he wants a side chick, or these sort of things in like side zinner relationships, you could say that. But if a guy's like, hey, I actually want to marry you, I want to have this responsibility in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with you and the community, so that they know that I'm married to you and I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to provide for you, X, Y, Z. Come on, Janet. Janet.
An important point of contention here with all the things that you're saying, and you keep bringing up that men and women are fundamentally different. Where is that coming from?
Where's what coming from?
When you say those things.
When I say what?
Men and women are fundamentally different in these very specific ways. Men are attracted to a woman's voice.
Okay, so scientifically, men and women are different. So if you were just look at someone, man, and I look at a woman, I'm pretty sure I would see some differences. As well as just scientifically, biologically, emotionally, psychologically, there's been studies, because everyone started to question you being able to change your sex and be able to change your gender, but you were created as a certain sex for a reason, and
so that's my point of contention here. There's nothing for me there. When you say that I was created for a specific purpose and a woman was created for a specific purpose, I would disagree completely. Why can't I fulfill those other purposes? When you start slowly building upon these layers of like roles, that prescriptive roles, that starts to create a system of oppression.
Yeah, well,
that's how it's built.
Well, can I say for personally myself, I would say that his view of it is also an interpretation as much as there's merit to it. Covering my hair and my face for me was so that people see my personality and my intellect before they see my beauty or they see the things that they're attracted to. Yeah. Also, in my culture, I'm ethnically black, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but our hair is very different from other races, and we go to great lengths to assimilate, and that was something that I personally struggled with before converting. So for me, it helped me gain confidence. I would be worried about like, how does my face look? Is there something on my face? Or some of your communication is also in your facial expression. So when you can't see some of it, you have to kind of, use your imagination a little bit. I like that mysteriousness. I like that, especially other men don't have that access, because I have a fiance. I like that there's only one person who can see these parts of me. And that's what makes it special in a way. So the roles for men and women, it's not entirely just because I want you to do it because I said so. It's probably because it's to your benefit. If you look further.
I want to add to your point that Allah actually says in the Quran.
So Taha, he objected to the brother Ja'ad in his response. And listen to what he was saying. He said, but why does it have to be like that? But when you have these kind of the prescriptive roles, then it brings about a system of oppression. So this is all in terms of the woman, right? I think Ja'ad here, who's like, well, I disagree, when the brother here, he says, this is all like the differences between men and women is biological, and he's like, well, I disagree. I mean,
come on, man.
If the sun is out and you have to argue with somebody if the sun is out or not, then maybe you shouldn't have this kind of discussion. I don't think Taha really has a place here, because if the question is about, are men and women equal in the eyes of Allah, and you're asking, well, why does it have to be like that? Then you need to be in a different discussion room. You don't need to be in this one, right?
Subhanallah. Yeah, it's funny. I'll just counter with this. If we were the same, exactly the same, why would there be a need for two of us? Why would there be a need for men and women if we're exactly the same? So Taha, if you can get pregnant, if you can breastfeed, if your menstrual cycle comes, let me know when that happens for you. Let me know when even your jobs give you maternity leave or paternity leave. Yeah, lets you go home and take care of your child and stuff like that. The same way. Let me know when you have those privileges to be able to do things that allow you.
He could probably get paternity leave though.
Yeah, paternity leave. Yeah, but it'd be maybe a month.
Right.
Yeah.
So the great point Ali D brought up is just, bro, why are you lying? Just stop lying. Your eyes. Now you're gonna defy your eyes. You're gonna defy what everybody knows just to strengthen your argument that Islam is false.
But these are such narrow, like, whataboutisms. These are such narrow circles.
So let me ask you a question.
No, but I want to
I'm sorry. I want to hear from Atiya and Janet as well.
Yeah.
I think also, here's just a food for thought, and I can guess the answer. Why don't y'all wear a hijab? Like, why can't men wear a hijab?
They are.
So I'm currently in hijab, right?
But I mean on your head. You have heads, women have heads.
So you consider that you're basically calling that hijab a headscarf. That's not what the hijab is.
I mean,
and once again, we already said that the hijab for men and women is different because we're both created physically different. So obviously the hijab for both of them is going to be different.
That statement is not really.
And then once again, you're implying that the hijab is oppressive to women. So that's what you're implying when you're saying that. Why can't men do it? Because do you believe that the hijab is oppressive to women?
But in the deepest depths of my soul, yes, I understand it can be a choice. I do believe it's oppressive.
By you agreeing that, or by you saying that the hijab is oppressive to women, that's actually disrespectful to our women in the religion, because you're either implying that these women can't think for themselves and that they're just wearing this hijab because they have a lot of intellect.
No, I think.
Or you're saying that we're all forcing every single woman in the religion to wear this and we're throwing this on their head.
No, I think we need to acknowledge how easily.
No, I'm saying that's what you're. That's what you're by saying that the women are being oppressed in the religion. That's because they have to wear the hijab.
It's not black and white.
Can I jump in here and ask? So these justifications that we are seeing for hijab, do these justifications really still have solid ground when we consider that the hijab was for only one class of women, free women? Slave women didn't wear hijab, and because men were allowed to have sex with slave women, they were being sexualized and objectified when Muslim men were considering whether they're going to purchase them.
Yeah, let me answer that. So to address
so starting off with Janet, we'll get to the kafir soon, but Janet is very interesting because it just seems like she's arguing for the sake of arguing, because she's like, well, why don't men wear this? Is that the question we're trying to answer? We're talking about, are men and women equal in the eyes of Allah? Not your eyes, Janet. So when we're talking about, well, I know it can be a choice, but it's oppressive, I understand what she's saying. I think what she's trying to say is that Allah is oppressive.
Right.
That's what she means. She doesn't mean that this sister or the other sisters that are in there are oppressed or they're oppressed. She means that Allah is oppressive. And I get that, right? And that's why you left, Janet. I understand Islam is something you don't want to be a part of. But when we're explaining to you why things are, and the Quran gives you reasons as to things, first of all, you don't know the reasons, because you mentioned that the Quran said that it was to not to tempt the men, and the Quran doesn't mention that, right? So Quran has in Surah An-Nur has a whole verse about the reasons to wear it, and it's that women don't get annoyed by men. And Janet, you know that the more skin that you show, that guys will come to you, right? Don't you have a problem with cat whistling? Don't you have a problem with guys that are trying to chop you down and they're insistent on trying to get your phone number and all that, right? I don't know. Maybe you don't have. Maybe you're into that kind of stuff. I don't know what it is. But when we're giving you reasons and you're like, well, that doesn't sound equal to me. Well, like we mentioned, there's a lot of things in society that you wouldn't consider equal, but the very same society that you live in, that you love so much, does not consider equal, right? For example, a woman getting punched in the face by a man, the society that you live in, not Islamic society, doesn't consider that equal. Do you see in boxing sports, would you also promote that women and men start fighting each other? No, you would have a problem with that. You would have a discomfort. Why, Janet? Because we are not the same.
Right.
So if we're equal in the eyes of Allah, and that's the question we should be answering, now you want to get into roles and how we're different biologically. Well, if we're different biologically, then that means that we're going to need different things catering to us to help us, right? So men don't use tampons.
Right.
Janet, women use tampons. So are you going to complain, well, why don't men wear it? Men need to have some pad. You see what I'm saying? It's just you're forcing this idea of extreme equality, but even in the very society that you live in, that doesn't exist.
Right.
So you expect it from the Quran, but not expect it from the society that you live in.
You know, ironically, the society that we used to live in, or times back then, they used to force women to cover up and even arrest them. There was a woman who was wearing a bathing suit, I don't know how long ago, maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago. She was arrested on the beach for wearing a bathing suit. So society is continually changing. So the thing is, you're going to either be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or your desires or society, but you will be obedient to something.
Yeah.
And so even her, in her case, I don't understand. I want to ask her the question, how much clothing should a woman wear? Should she be fully nude when she's out in public? Should she take off all her clothes? We're adults here. Let's have this conversation. Should she not wear anything? And so if you say, no, well, she should just cover up, is that subjective or is that objective? And if she's covering up, then what is the problem with a woman covering up entirely? So that she doesn't want people to see exactly how she looks under her clothes. And she wants to save that for her husband, her family, her safe space, as opposed to a society that where women are being assaulted, women are being raped, women are being hurt, and things like that. And they're looking for safety and looking for comfort in a place where this is ongoing. So I ask you that question. Is it subjective or objective? Which one are you going to follow?
Yeah, so, I mean, is another great point. If Janet has this big, and Janet, by extension of all the other girls and the women that think like her, if somebody's not practicing the Quran, like let's say they're not Muslims, and they wear what looks like to you a hijab, would you have a problem? You say no, because that's her choice. But because if somebody says, well, I'm doing this because I'm a Muslim and Allah says in the Quran, you would have a problem. Your issue here is, and I think that you all, the atheists, ex-Muslims, actually in this video, was just startling, all agree and you believe that Allah exists. But you want to defy him. And this is, everything in your argument is just about defying Allah, right? Like I said, if somebody else did it outside of the deen, you wouldn't have a problem.
Absolutely not.
But you have a problem because a practitioner of Islam is doing it, right? So I would argue too that you guys are what they would consider Islamophobic as well. Ex-Muslims are usually Islamophobic.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're explaining to you why. This part here is quite interesting.
Kinda.
Nah, we got to. Can you go? This part is crazy. Did you see the pause part?
No, I didn't. Okay.
Oh,
to address your slavery point, I'll get on that in a second, right? But the point that you're asking, if we are really equal, how could that be? And you were asking if
wait, pause it real quick. Sorry. I got to add one more serious point.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing, just to add to Jana's point, and how Brother Uthman touched on this. If you're a doctor, are you allowed to walk in to the operating room or into your office completely nude or dress however you want? If you're a professor at school, do you dress, underdressed in front of children, young boys and young girls and things like that? As a police officer, do you dress whatever you want and not wear a uniform? Society has ways for you to have to follow certain things. But when it comes to Islam, this is where we talk about being oppressive to women, and Allah hates women, and He makes sure that they're completely covered up and they have no sense of freedom. So just want to keep that point in mind, inshallah.
Absolutely.
In a time where a lot of what you're saying just isn't relevant.
So
I'm not going to be found in a situation.
Thank you. I would love to wrap this up, and I would love it if the women would wrap it up.
I will say I feel like it's very rooted in, when it comes to covering up, for example, it's to protect you. And if you are dressed immodestly, they might react a certain way. They're attracted to your voice. I just have to say, I am a lesbian, and I am not tempted by, in my mind, I don't see a woman walking down the street immodestly, and it's not rooted in equality. Like the prompt said, Allah sees both men and women as equal, and I don't hear that honestly at all.
And when you're saying
things you're saying,
thank you. I would love.
This is the part I'm confused at. So she's saying that Allah is saying men and women are equal, and then I'm confused. Do you believe that Allah is saying that or not? I'm so lost. So you're saying again, this is kind of like ignorant, like self-centering, or arrogance here. It's like, well, I'm lesbian, so I don't have those problems. Why is that in the Quran? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Majority of the women in the world are not lesbians.
Right.
I'm sorry, Janet. If you're a lesbian, majority of the women in the world are not lesbians.
She's imposing
her
opinions
whole,
and her
whole ideology on the Quran, on Islam, on the Deen. And it's like, what's crazy is even the sister who's not wearing the hijab, she understands that, there's experiences people have, and there's something that's in the religion, in the Quran. You can't mix the two.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Janet is she just doesn't want to.
And it's anecdotal. Again, I told you the key words early on in the video. They love this idea of putting their personal life in front of their, with their opinions to say, well, this is how I feel, and this is what I think, and this is how I. Once you go above and beyond with that, then you're blinded. You won't see anything else but the way life is for you. And that's the biggest problem for Janet right now.
Yeah. And then also, did you hear the pause part? How they cut him off? This also shows you too is that this gives you an idea of the organizers of this video as well. You got to keep that in mind. They're not so friendly to Islam as they're trying to make it seem. They're trying to make it seem to be that they're inclusive, but it's really not. And sisters, I'm gonna just mention something that it may bother you guys, but you have to hear it. Just because you're a woman does not make you an expert on Islam. It doesn't make you expert on hijab. It doesn't make you expert on niqab. Yeah, you have your experiences. No one can take that away from you. Those are your experiences. But when it comes to the deen of Allah, we have to go back to the text. The men and the women have to go back to the text. Absolutely. Just because a brother is a brother doesn't mean that he is knowledgeable about Islam. It doesn't mean that fathers are knowledgeable and just by default they're just endowed with all this knowledge. It doesn't mean that imams are perfect because they're men. And it doesn't mean that they're untouchable and infallible. That's not what that means. So I want us to get out of this idea that just because I'm this gender, I'm expert on this matter, which it seems like the organizers are trying to enforce.
Of course. And this you could tell by the pool of individuals that they brought onto the episode. There's not anyone who has credibility to really speak on this as much. Absolutely. Maybe the brother Ja'ad, he's trying, mashallah, tabarakallah, he's given effort, but you could just tell by the choices that they made of people who they chose. And there's no excuse for them to say, well, we tried, we went to, there's no excuse.
No, I think it's pretty hand-picked is the
absolutely.
decision.
Is, in a different sense, lost, yes, it hurt, maybe at the time, but I look at it from the outside perspective, that was the decision that I had to make. A relationship that I've lost
is in a different sense than losing contact with them, but the relationship I lost with them is that I'm unable to be my true self around them. And that relationship is with my mother, and it's the reason why I'm in this ridiculous outfit today. Because if my mother ever found out that her only child is gonna go to hell forever because he left Islam, it's gonna hurt her so badly. I saw myself how much it hurt my mom when I was talking openly about my doubts in Islam in high school. It was causing her like literal depression. The reason I continue to pretend and I don't really have the bravery to come out and be my true self around her is because she's the best mom I could have ever asked for. She worked so hard to raise me. She sacrificed so much to give me a really happy childhood. And the idea that I will be showing her that all her hard work was for nothing because her child is gonna burn in hell forever, I can't hurt her like that again, like I hurt her in the past. She doesn't deserve to be hurt. She deserves to be happy.
You know what, the part that stood out to me the most is when he said, when my mom finds out that her only son is going to hell forever. He didn't say, well, that's what she thinks. He believes he's going to hell forever. SubhanAllah.
Wow.
He chose that path.
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna hadaynahu sabil imma shakiran wa imma kafura. So this is something that everyone has a choice. Everybody has a choice.
Right.
Just like this man is saying he was once a part of and he left. By the way, I would question the whole notion that these guys were ever Muslims. I'll be honest with you. Because to be a Muslim means that you submitted your will to Allah.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely. And if you got to an age where you are an age of understanding and you still struggle with that and you still disbelieve, like you're like, I don't believe any of this stuff, I think it's stupid. Is it really fair to ever say you were a Muslim? You can say, you know, I grew up, I was raised in a Muslim family. You could loosely say I was raised Muslim.
Right.
But were you ever Muslim? This is something we have to consider, because ex-Muslims like to wave this card around. Hey, I was a part of that group, you know, and don't go there. And this is what they're doing. And this is what they. But if you actually listen to a lot of them, they really don't understand what they're talking about.
Absolutely not.
They don't understand. When you put a lot of their kalam to the test, a lot of their objections to the Quran, it won't stand. It just won't stand.
So I'll say this about this guy. He's very clever in trying to sell a sob story and trying to sell as to why. I mean, all of us, of course. He's very clever. That's why he uses the words like child's mother, and knowing that I'm gonna break my mother's heart, and you know he's gonna hit a chord, make you feel sad for him. At the end of the day, we're adults, and we have choices. And he's very clever at trying to convince you why he should be an ex-Muslim. But he's doing a terrible job at that. If you love your mother, and this is a question for him. If you love your mother, right, you love her, when you buying her a gift, do you buy her a gift that you love or you like, or do you buy her a gift that she loves? The answer is clear. You buy your mother what she loves because it's going to make her happy. And so if we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're an ex-Muslim and you still believe that he exists, now worshiping him, are you going to worship him, or are you going to say, no, I'm going to convince myself of my own desires and do what I like to do? As opposed to you love Allah, you take care of what he wants you to take care of. He created you. He gave you life when you had nothing. He gave you sustenance when you had nothing. He gave you a means when you had nothing. And you still convinced yourself that, no, I'm just going to use my own desires to navigate and give myself a sense of compass in this world to guide myself around. Yet, still convince yourself that you know that your world is going to come to an end. Your life is going to come to an end. So why don't you just do yourself a sense of justice, Mr. Kafir, and say, I have these questions. Let me go out wholeheartedly, sincerely, and find these answers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will open those doors for you to find these answers. But the way it looks like is when you're a closeted ex-Muslim because you're afraid of your mother. But what about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What about the one who created you and I? Yeah. Why are you not afraid of him? And doing yourself just that justice, maybe even for your mother, to be like, if my mother loves this religion so much, let me do what she would want me to do and seek the truth. If I'm not convinced after I tried my absolute best in the right direction, because you cannot say, for example, I'm going to make this pie and then I'm going to use the wrong ingredients and then convince yourself that the pie is wrong, that this pie doesn't taste good. You have to go seek the right ingredients in the right places and then be like, taste it and be like, okay, whether or not. But brother, may Allah guide you.
I mean.
Say I haven't lost any relationships as far as like dating, and I am no contact with my family, but it's actually not because of the difference in religion, it's because of a plethora of other things. I would say I went to that Islamic academy growing up, and ironically, it was the best years of my life. I had the best friends. When I went to a secular school, I'm from a conservative area, so I was the only Iranian, so they were bullying me for being hairy. And then when I went to the Islamic academy, I didn't have that problem anymore. It wasn't until when I went to high school and I'm like distancing myself from Islam that a lot of people from our local community just kind of, like there's whispers of, oh, Janet's family is hypocrites. She's a whore because I don't dress modestly as they'd like me to, et cetera, et cetera. I've lost a lot of, I would say, my Muslim friends from the school.
Thank you for sharing, guys. I also want to say, I think I have a very...
I just want to comment on that. So she says the best times of her the best years of her life were in the Islamic school.
Ironically.
And some of the most difficult times she had was in public school. Yet when she got to high school, she decided to distance herself. It sounds like she's kind of pleading for the acceptance of the wider society. That's what it sounds like.
The one that negated her before.
If you look at those sort of the recipe that she gave you,
yeah,
that sounds like a plausible conclusion. It's like, okay, I better, if I, this is what they want, so I'm gonna just do what they want.
Right.
So Janet, the other thing too, I forgot to mention is that she's Irani, so she's Iranian, and they're Shia, most of them. And I want us to understand that there's a completely different dynamic when we talk about Iranian Muslims, because a lot of them leave the religion when they come to the States, or they just is so watered down. And so I want us to always keep that clear in our minds, is that the culture that she grows up in actually is very accepting of people leaving the religion. And it's not really a hard press. I don't know if you guys have been watching the news about Iran and the hijab situation and women throwing off their hijab. A lot of them are actually dissatisfied with the Shi'i religion and the Shi'i ideology that is, a theocracy there in Iran. So, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And this is why I would challenge is that Janet here, when she's reading the Quran, and a lot of the rules that she knows of Islam are usually in the Shi'i corpus, not in the Sunni. So when she says Islam, non-Muslims would look at that as all of, you guys are just like the Sunni Muslims, and they're not. We have to, that distinction it matters. That she's from a minority sect of that will be considered Muslims, but the majority of Muslims will fall under the Sunni realm, which it seems like the majority of them are here. Allahu A'lam. So her experiences are going to be is going to add more spices to her experience, right? And I think if it may be just that sort of difference for her, that if she actually took her time to study Islam the proper way, that maybe a lot of these misconceptions would be erased or done away with.
Yeah, good point. I think the other thing to add is that the concept of how water and oil don't mix, right? So as she mentioned in the beginning, like the environment that was a non-Muslim environment that she's in, it was harder for her to be accepted in that environment because she was deemed different.
Yeah.
And then the same would apply even in Islamic environments. If you're someone who doesn't practice Islam, if you're an ex-Muslim, then, it's not easy for you to be accepted in that environment. It's clear as day. And so you would see that in anything. You would see that in many societies. Like if you play football, you know, someone who's on the math team or something doesn't hang out with the football players, or if someone who works out doesn't hang out with someone who likes to sit home and eat junk food all day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or high school, you know, there's different groups. Certain groups hang out in certain groups, and they don't like hanging out with those groups, and X, Y, and Z. So you know, whenever you're in an environment that if you don't adapt to what they got going on, they're not going to accept you.
That's true.
And so the irony, even in her, Janet, is you can just tell by the way she's dressed and the way she's acting that is an environment that doesn't coincide with Islam as much. So she doesn't feel accepted. But when she was wearing a hijab and going to the Islamic school and doing those things, and she was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But that's when she started questioning herself and saying, well, the other side doesn't accept me, but I want to be a part of them. And that's when she threw off the hijab, threw off the clothing, her sexuality changed. And now that they've accepted her, she feels like, oh, well, Islam should have accepted me the way I am. And then she wants to run back to Islam, and they're not opening those doors for her. So that is the irony in this entire thing right now for her.
Yeah. Janet, yeah. I mean, aside from the point that, which I think also kind of does makes it even, you know, stacks it up, is that, well, she's a lesbian. It's going to be very hard for her.
Yeah.
I think that's usually kind of a driving point to get someone on their course of being a non-Muslim. But, you know, may Allah guide all of them.
My personal desires do not have a place in Islamic faith.
For me, other than like the obvious, I'm part of the LGBT community. I was raised Muslim, and I felt like I didn't have decisions or choices growing up. And when it came to Islam, I remember I'd question things in my religion class. I remember like the imam told me, like, women, when you go to Hajj, you can't wear like body spray, right? Or perfume. And I raised my hand during my religious class, and I asked why. And I always got met with, well, because the Quran says so. Like, be quiet, Janet's the problematic kid asking me questions. I just feel like there's no room really there, even without the LGBT community part of me. Like, what you want kind of, it felt like, doesn't matter. There's no room for it. It's just, it is what it is, and you need to obey it.
At the end of the day, if you commit a sin and you don't seek repentance, Allah is going to punish you for it, even if your personal desires conflict with that. Because of that looming threat, it does not matter what you want. If it goes against what Allah says, then you are risking having your bones crushed in the grave, or you are risking having your skin burned off of your face. It doesn't matter how illogical you think it is. If you believe in Islam and Allah says it's bad and you go against that, you are putting yourself in a huge risk of a lot of pain and suffering.
So don't do it. What is this
guy, man?
Like, you just bet like, bro, if you ask Allah for forgiveness, Allah will forgive you.
Absolutely.
Allah will forgive anybody. And he said, Ya ibadiya alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. Inna Allah al-ghafur rahim. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, everyone, if you make a mistake, just ask for forgiveness. You do this, ask for forgiveness, make repentance. He's making it seem like once you make a mistake, you're done. You're going to hell, right? That's a Khariji way of thinking, Kafir. That's probably why you have your face covered up, you know. So it's again, it's a disingenuous thing, and the way he's trying to portray the Quran when it comes to sins is so disingenuous, bro. Yeah. It's so like, bro, just don't even have this conversation. Like, if you're gonna do that and ignore all the verses about repentance and forgiveness, all the hadith about forgiveness and repentance, like, that's just ridiculous, bro.
Threw it out the window. The Prophet ﷺ said very, very simple. He said, if we are in a nation that sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace us with a nation that sins, but that comes back and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. That the forgiveness part overcomes the sins that we commit. Because we're human, we're imperfect, we'll make mistakes, we have shortcomings, we have desires, things that attract us, that we grow to. We're not born with this, it's not innate. But we grow and we go towards these things. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you fell, you messed up, just come back. And that is greater for you, because He's going to test us. Yeah. Just like when your mother tells you, don't touch that hot iron, it's going to burn you. and you're like tempted. You're like, I want to touch it just because I was even told not to touch it. Then you touch it and you burn yourself. Does your mom always say, oh, you know, she puts a Band-Aid on your finger, she puts Neosporin or whatever to try to calm it down, and she reminds you not to touch it again. But then obviously when it comes to Islam, we want to throw this word around. You're gonna go to hell. He's gonna burn you. He's gonna do this. This brother is trying his best to justify all his desires. If everyone in the world is allowed to act upon their desires, then this society will be doomed forever. It's very simple. There's people who are kleptomaniacs, or people who like to steal, people who like to kill people who like to do all these things because they feel like it's their desire and they should go after it. Islam teaches you that there's restrictions in life, that they don't fall into these traps. Stay away from it. And even if you do, come right back. Even law in any society tells you that you're not allowed to do these things. But the problem is that you want Islam to be very fluid. You want it to adapt to these societies and say, well, homosexuality is alive. Homosexuality is okay. Certain practices, alcoholism and drugs is widely practiced. We should be allowed to just drink it in moderation and things of that nature. And then you want to say that Islam should accept it. Well, Islam is very important and very direct at saying we want to nip it in the bud. Allah says, don't go near it. Don't get tempted by it. Don't even try to step just to peek around and say, what is that thing right there? I want to see what that's about. It's telling you, be proactive. And this guy's trying to tell you, no, do it the opposite way. And that's his problem.
Yeah, I think I don't want to add more to that. But the whole thing that's driving these people, it seems like it's just their desires. It's what they want.
Yeah.
And I think if they were more honest with themselves, they'd say, look, that's cool. You guys have Islam and stuff, but I just want to do whatever I want.
Right.
Just say that. Don't try to come with these weak arguments about, well, that doesn't make. So let's listen to a little bit more of what they have to say.
Yeah, I think it's not that it doesn't have room for our desires, because it does. It just doesn't have room for our compulsions. And I heard this quote, someone said, my religion is perfect, but I am not. You have to allow Islam to teach you that you've blurred the lines between your desires and your compulsions and the things that you actually need out of life. So it's really hard to be connected to God if you're connected to all these things that are calling you, pulling you different directions.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So does your standard for haram and halal vary at all? What would you base your standard off of? How were you taught those standards?
Quran, Sunnah. What is going on? It's like we're having a discussion about Islam, and he totally just ignores the two simple sources, really, Quran and Ahadith, that are sahih. It's like, where do you get your halal and haram from? Really, Taha? And this is why we're saying they're not really. This is not genuine, bro.
Yeah,
this is absolutely not genuine.
I don't know if he must be a paid actor. I think they grabbed him from Craigslist or something like that.
Subhanallah.
I learned them from Quran. Or from my upbringing. If I don't know.
So, So I think everything you're saying is valid, and I think you can also believe all these things even just outside of Islam. I think these principles have
show me one religion that has all of these morals. You don't find it.
Impossible. Actually.
Is there one on the face of this earth today besides Islam? No. You have some that come close. You have some that come real close, but maybe the Jews are close to us. A lot closer than the Christians, and then after them, really, who's there? So the idea that Taha, now he's trying his best to get this girl, to get this sister, deviate her from where she's on in her path of growing as a Muslim. And you see how this is demonic, bro. These guys, they don't want you to stay Muslim.
Yeah.
If this was about, hey, everyone get to do their own choice, he's not happy.
Yeah.
If you're a Muslim, he's not happy. Subhanallah.
Yeah. Existed throughout time, other religions, other philosophies. And so my question is when it comes to the more sort of confusing, I was raised, I'm not allowed to eat pork. Okay. So I'm sure, yeah. Nobody here.
Same.
Right. And so I think at one point somebody told me that was because they're not safe to eat or like, you know, it's dirty. Point being, there are moments, like you can definitely live your life that way, but my question is like, at what
Someone told you? Why didn't you just read the Quran?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just look at the hadith? Like, come on, bro. Why are we playing these games? Taha. Like, these guys are literally here discussing a way of life that there's up to 2 billion people estimated that follow this way of life. This is an insult to even have this kind of discussion with someone who's just like, where'd you get halal and haram from? How do you decide that? And then now saying stuff like, you know, I heard about pork. Like, well, you don't need to hear anything. You have a phone, look it up.
Right there.
It's
like, at what point do you question those nuances, those confusing points?
First I question why I'm questioning it. It's like, why do I want to have a different answer than what's written here? First I question that. And then I'll do research and I'll say, okay, well, how were people living like before my time, before my parents, before my grandparents, and why didn't they choose to eat this animal? Well, maybe because it eats its own fecal matter or it eats its children, I mean, you know, its own fetus and stuff like that. Well,
I understand, what I'm saying is like, how do you deal with the logic of it?
Yeah,
because there's many ways to argue around it.
If I can't is it okay if I interject here? Thank you. So essentially, yeah, there's a lot of things that you may not understand why something is not. Essentially what you're saying is if something is not allowed and you don't understand why.
Here, which is that why am I questioning? And then there's your part. If I don't get the right answer or an answer that makes sense to me, I keep asking, I keep asking, I keep asking. But if you don't get it, then there's this kind of cognitive dissonance that now needs to exist.
I think like a good way to put it is like part of existing as a human being is questioning everything. That's how we developed everything. That's how we grow and adapt.
I want to add something really quick. I know that like there has been a lot of questions with what he said, especially you guys.
One second. I just, alhamdulillah, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Islam. Because the beautiful thing is, as Allah mentions in the Quran, as-sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. Because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directing us in the right direction, alhamdulillah, by the things He's ordained for us to do. Sometimes even you know, when your mother tells you when you're younger, don't do this or don't do that, even if you didn't understand, you don't doubt your mother, you trust and love your mother and that she wants the best for you, so you go, all right, I'm gonna stay away from that. And so we do the same thing as adults with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's literally making sure that we do things correctly, knowing we're gonna slip up. It's part of the test. But alhamdulillah, we hear and we obey. There's no question about that. But when you go into this, you know, but I thinking, you know, I just, you know, why am I not allowed to question things? Brother, alhamdulillah is all I'm gonna say with that point.
Yeah, I mean, the sister, she brought up a good point. She says, you know, I question myself on why do I even question this? Why do I want my answer to not coincide with Islam or with the Quran or with the authentic ahadith? And, you know, I think when you're just a strong skeptic, where one of the sisters is going to speak on soon, you'll question everything. And just because you don't understand why, it doesn't mean that it's not something that's logically sound.
Right.
It may be an issue with you. And this is the humility that you're not getting from these people, is they're not saying, well, I don't understand it. Because there's a lot of things you don't understand of the American legal system that you still follow. You won't dare question it, right? Because this jail time, all that. So you're like, you know, I'm not going to say anything. Whatever you guys want to do it. But when it comes to Islam, the one who created you, the one who knows your ins and outs,
right.
The Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who did all this for you, then it's like, well, let me question because I can.
Right.
So this is just, again, just, I don't know, man.
One more thing. I think this is a cliche Tumblr type saying or Twitter. You know, it's whenever we're on a plane, we sit back and relax. Even though we don't know the pilot or what direction he's going to go, we put our trust in him or her. We do the same thing when somebody is driving us, if we're in the backseat of a taxi or Uber or something like that, or if we're on a boat or a yacht and we don't even know who the captain is. We put our trust in these people to get us to our destination.
Right.
No matter the direction they take us, we put our trust in them. Where is the same trust when it comes to the one who created your life and is guiding you in the right direction? And you're saying, nah, I don't think so. I want to try it this way. I think what saves a lot of people, or actually not save, I think what is harming a lot of people is that the punishments for the mistakes we're making are not coming down right away. And so that gives you some sort of confidence to be like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And that is actually harming you more than you think. So putting your trust in Allah should be just the same way you do with the pilots, the captains, those who are teaching you in school, trying to get you educated and certifying you, whatever, the doctor at the hospital, X, Y, and Z. But when it comes to Allah, that's when we go, nah, man, I'm just going to follow my own desire.
It's a really ignorant, arrogant thing to say, well, if it doesn't make sense to me, then it doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
Like, and tell me about the capacity of your intellect. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you can comprehend everything in the universe. Come on, man.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Existing as a human being is questioning everything. That's how we developed everything. That's how we grow and adapt.
I want to add something really quick. I know that like there has been a lot of questions with what he said, especially you guys saying like that's blind faith. I think that there is like, I see your point, but there's a lot of merit. And like I agree that like meaning of life is questioning things. However, if you keep questioning everything, you're going to have the most doubtful, horrible, untrusting life in the entire universe. The goal of life is to be in peace, right? So I think that like we can only question some of the things. And I think personally, from my questioning, I have found the answers to which that has led me to trust the God that I believe in. And that is why I also believe in the other things that he tells me to subscribe to, because I believe that that is good for me. So it's not always that every Muslim or anybody who subscribes to religion is like blindly believing in everything. No, they have a trusting relationship with that form of God or that religion or that ideology, and therefore they choose to subscribe to other ideals.
And you know, this is about, and let's just stop there. These guys making my head hurt.
Yeah.
Altia, may Allah guide you and increase you in guidance. She's bringing some good points.
Right.
But it's about just having this hyper skepticism about everything. You want to be a hyper skeptic about everything. And that's why I say they're pseudo skeptics, because pseudo meaning they're fake. Because if they were truly the skeptical, they would be skeptical about even why they think the way they think, and they're not. The only skepticism that they're throwing is at Allah, at the Quran, at the, the Muslims. It's not about, why do I think that way? And that's where I'm saying that they're not even sincere. Like this other sister who's talking about, I asked myself why I even want to question the Quran or question the tenets of Islam. Like that's a sincere way to go about it. But if you're just going to act like you are the end all be all and you know everything that's good for you and good for society, that's a very arrogant stance to go by. If you want to do whatever you want to do, you go ahead. But if you're going to be like a skeptic about the world and everything, there's no end. You will go insane. And I think that's a great point that Altia, she mentioned. I'm probably saying her name wrong, so forgive me. But she mentioned, even though she's not wearing the hijab herself, and there are a lot of sisters like that still believe Islam is the truth, and they may have, their own journey in terms of, their practice, and, we ask Allah to increase them in their guidance and to, and to make it easy for them. But I don't know, man. These guys, the new modern atheist is a pseudo skeptic, a pseudo intellect.
Yeah. One question I wish that they asked on here is, what's next? What's next in your life after this? As an ex-Muslim, where do you go and navigate your life once you've left Islam? Because for many people, again, I said it in the beginning, it's that they don't find contradictions in Islam, in the Quran and Sunnah or anything like that. It's very anecdotal, it's very personal things. So where are you going after this? Why haven't you done yourself a sincere justice by learning about Islam as much as you can? Because as the brother mentioned, there are millions and millions of Muslims over time who have been practicing Islam and will continue to practice Islam. So what is it about Islam that is making them practice it? What is it about Islam that has them hold on to it as hard as they can possibly could? And so when you leave this, where are you going? What is left? Because we know life is short. It's going to start and it's going to end.
Yeah.
So what are you preparing for after that? If you don't have the answer, I would advise you to seek that.
Yeah.
Go and search, because just like when we walk into, like a court system or a courtroom, we're bringing witnesses and we know someone died, right? Let's just say someone died, and we want to bring it to justice. We want to make sure we provide justice for it. We want the answers as to why this happened. Who we found, we look for the witnesses, we look for video cameras, we look for all these things. But if you just say, oh, this person was killed and I'm just going to go on about my life, the person is dead and I'm going to move on, whatever happens, then there is no justice.
Yeah.
So what is your purpose in life? Why are you created? Where did we come from? And where are we going?
Yeah.
Ask yourself these questions. And if you're going to be obedient, which one of these things are you going to be obedient to? Is it going to be to your desires, a different faith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You're going to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Which one of them? Because you have to be obedient to something.
Yeah. Yeah, just wrapping up here. I'm done.
Yeah.
It's just about being sincere, asking these questions. If you're trying to learn about Islam, actually learn it the right way. A lot of these, the ex-Muslims here, they had issues in their past when they were kids, and that's what, drove them away. But if you're an adult, why don't you actually go and actually learn? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal insanu ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. Ya ayyuhal insan ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. Oh mankind, oh human being, what has made you go into a deception about your Lord, who is, he is Kareem. He's generous, right? And he's been generous to us all of our lives. And, subhanAllah, really, it's a sad thing to see, people just go astray. But I do also want us to realize that there is a reality when it comes to guidance, is that not everyone will get the guidance. Not everybody will get. And so there's people who leave Islam, and that's for them. It's good for them. And that's what that is. And that's just how it is. People will leave the deen. And what we need to understand is that people at the end of the day will do whatever they want to do. Right? And that's why there's a Jannah and there's Jahannam. Okay? If Allah, He doesn't guide you, there is no guidance that you'll find in this dunya. And so that's why we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance to keep us on the straight path and steadfast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great ending. Again, I think this is tough for a lot of people. And if you are someone, I hope you don't. If you're someone who has doubts, don't just leave. And this is advice to our Muslim brothers and sisters out there. Don't just be like, I'm gonna run away because I don't understand. Do yourself a huge favor. Go out and seek that answer. Go out and find that. Because if you just say, my family did this to me, my culture did this to me, the environment I did this to me, that's why I'm leaving, then now you've already limited yourself. You put yourself in a tiny box and said that's enough to justify why Islam is not a true religion, or Islam is something I want to follow personally. So if you are a Muslim and you don't have, it's okay to ask questions. Ask these questions. Ask questions. Ask questions. The answers are there, 100%. But if you say, if the answer doesn't fit me, and I'm a size medium, and the answer is a size small or a size large, and you run away, then that's a personal issue, a desire. Because Shaitan, again, his whole thing is he vowed to try and misguide us. Yeah. He vowed to try and brainwash us and try to put us in the wrong direction. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still here and still more powerful than the Shaitan. And so I advise you personally to just go out and learn these things. Yeah. When you're younger, of course, you're listening to your parents, whether they're right or wrong. They may not have the knowledge for you. The community may not have it for you. But as a full-grown adult, and adulthood hits when you hit puberty. When you become an adult, and you feel that, now you know you have to learn about Islam in its truest form. Else, you're going to be in a position like this, where now there's a void in your heart because you ripped Islam out, and now you're trying to replace it with just immediate self-pleasure. Sexuality, and I'm going to just get high and get drunk, and I don't care about life and wear whatever I want, all these things. knowing that every single day you have to continue to feed that, and that is your enemy. Your nafs become your enemy.
Right.
Shaitan is your enemy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm on your side. As long as Allah is on your side, you're 100% a winner, no matter who your enemy is. But if Allah is on the opposite end and you have the entire world behind you, you have lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to conclude it with.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what that is. Subhanallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.